Hey, IB History Scholars, it's Mr. Newcomb here. I want to continue with the session dealing with topic 10, Authoritarians. In this particular segment, I want to focus on Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was the leader of Germany, and Adolf Hitler was a fascist, and that puts him on the right side of the spectrum as a right-winger. When we look at Adolf Hitler, what allows him to emerge as the authoritarian figure in Germany, we have to look at some of the factors here. And so the Weimar Republic, created right after World War I, proved to be politically weak. It faced both left-wing communist rebellions and right-wing conservative and nationalist opposition. So Germany was a political hot mess. It was very polarized. Overall, there was an intense dislike for the Treaty of Versailles. They always viewed it as a dictated treaty to them. They did not have a part in it. The German Workers' Party is going to be formed in or right after World War I. When Adolf Hitler joined it, he quickly emerges as one of the most principal leaders here, and so in 2021, they will rename it the Nazi Party, or the National Socialist German Workers' Party here. We'll just simply call them Nazis. Many elements of the Nazi ideology had already existed in Germany. Anti-Semitic, this racial superiority, this idea of the Aryan race, survival of the fittest, and this need for a principal leader. They sometimes call it the Führerprinzip. To continue with this emergence element here, Hitler brought his own belief to German nationalism, and he drew on the discontent of the popular post-war Germany to establish the doctrine of Nazism. So he took advantage of the situation, the conditions. They did have a 25-point program in 1920. It set out the principles of nationalism, radicalism, anti-Semitism, and community here. So it's laid out like it intended to do this. It was a emerging political party. Now, how to get into power was another thing, whether it was going to be through the ballot or through violent means. They first made an attempt in 1923. It was a failed beer hall putsch in Munich, which is going to lead to the reorganization of the Nazi Party. Hitler is going to get some jail time, and while he's in jail, he's going to write Mein Kampf. It's kind of a snoozer, but it is the blueprint for German revival. To continue with the emergence here, in the 1920s and 1930s, there was an increasing emphasis on anti-communism and anti-feminism, rearmament, prep for war, anti-communism, a need for living space, and elimination of the Jews. That is the main themes. They'll keep focusing on that, and they keep coming back to it. The Nazis will do that. Economic conditions proved unfavorable after World War I, and the withdrawal of U.S. loans after the Wall Street crash of 1929 definitely created an economic crisis state for Germany. Hitler and the Nazi Party is going to rise to power through the ballot after the failed attempt of the putsch in 1923, big win in 1932. As a result of that, more Nazis are going to be in the Reichstag, which is the German parliament, and that's going to put pressure on Otto von Bismarck, not Otto von Bismarck. Whoa, I got to back up here. The German president, Paul von Hindenburg. It's going to put pressure on him to appoint Adolf Hitler chancellor, and in January of 1933, Hitler does become chancellor. So now he's in power, and he's going to work on consolidating that power. And to do that, there's a number of steps that he needs to engage in here in order for this consolidation and then maintaining his power. Without removing old structures entirely, Hitler ensured that the Nazi Party gained control over government at both the central and local levels, removed any non-party members, and appointed Nazis in government positions. This is going to, therefore, then enact many of their views here. The Enabling Act gave Hitler dictatorial power, and that's going to be passed right after the Reichstag building burns. The law of restoration of professional civil service basically is going to remove anyone from civil service jobs who are not Nazis, and so job is tied to party membership. And many people join the party just for that. They may not necessarily be hard card-carrying Nazi members. They may not necessarily believe in the views, but it's about maintaining their civil service job. And the reconstruction of the state in terms of the federal states are going to be under Reich governors. And so again, very elaborate, very systematic, putting Nazis in place here. He made sure that no sectional interests that might conflict with Nazism would be able to exist. So he's going to ban trade unions and other political parties. And he forms an agreement with the Catholic Church called the Concordat. And so again, slowly putting the different views, different group views out there, marginalizing them, putting them out on the fringe. Continue with the consolidation here and maintaining power. Hitler made extensive use of the propaganda to promote his dictatorship. Joseph Goebbels was his propaganda minister, and so that was going to be, he's going to be very, very critical here, but relied on the repression of his opponents as well. And so the Night of the Long Knives in 1934, he purges the SA officials from the Nazi Party. The SA was the socialist arm of the Nazi Party. And so in order to prove to the conservatives and to the military that Hitler is not going to engage in any type of socialist revolution here, the SA needed to go. President Paul von Hindenburg dies in 1934, and Hitler just assumes the title and becomes the Führer, and the German people accept it. Hitler tried to bring all areas within the state under his control, but the army was too powerful for him to challenge him immediately. Hitler assumes complete control in 1938. There was little opposition to Nazi rule, but beneath the surface, political, ideological, and religious hostility remains. So, realistically, after, you could say by 1935, he's pretty much in control here. And foreign policy successes up to 1940 add to the popularity and his power. And so it's going to be, again, almost extremely difficult to remove this guy from power in 1940. So when we look at his domestic policies and their impact, he's got to create this Nazi state. And he needs to follow through on his plans here if he wants to maintain that power. And so to do that, some of the domestic policies, like his economic policies, was that he needed to somehow mold it and be able to get it geared towards what he wants. And ultimately, that is getting Germany ready for war. So the Nazi economic policy, though, overall, was pretty incoherent. And despite having some ideological basis, was molded by the circumstances, the Great Depression and war here. Schott helped the German economy recover from 1933, but clashed with Hitler over rearmament and was dismissed. Then Hermann Goering had initiated the 4-year plan aimed for autarky, self-sufficiency, but never fully achieved it. And that will be a problem. Because they don't fully achieve autarky, they can't fight a total war. They're going to have to, if they're going to have any success, it's going to have to be a blitzkrieg, a very short war. Germany was not ready for that total war in 1939, and the economy nearly collapsed in 1942. Albert Speer reorganized the labor supply and the distribution of raw materials here. The economy ultimately collapsed in 1945, right as the war is in its final phases here, and the Allied bombing is occurring. So when we look at other aspects of the domestic policies here, policies towards women, Nazi Germany was a step back from the Weimar Republic, so we got a change in status here from being liberal to now conservative. Their aim was to keep women at home. Women were viewed as the mother, housewives, and community organizers. In order to keep women a key part of their policy, they engaged in things like Lebensborn, Spring of Life, unmarried women with SS officers. Women were given medals for a number of children. We'll call it the Mother Cross here. They're going to outlaw abortions, close birthing centers, increase maternity benefits here, income tax allowance for dependent children, all in an effort to try to keep women at home and produce as many babies as possible, because after all, they're going to be aging more and they're going to need more soldiers. However, as the war does wage, women are going to be encouraged to come back into the workforce as the war progresses, and that's something that Albert Speer had worked very hard with on Hitler, and he finally acquiesces to it. So other domestic policies here, there was an attempt to control the church through the Catholic Concordat and a separate Reich Protestant church. There was an attempt, but again, mixed results. The modern culture was rejected in favor of a controlled and conservative approach to the arts, which demanded that the arts should glorify Nazi values, and the establishment of the right chamber of culture. So if you want to be an artist, you need to subscribe to the Nazi ideology. Youth people were the focus of intense indoctrination through the Hitler Youth and Hitler Maiden in the education system. Race ideology was infused into the curriculum. If we want to look at some lost years of intellectual development for kids, this is it going on in Germany right now. For minorities, they're going to be persecuted. They're the scapegoats. They're going to be persecuted for their political, social, and racial nonconformity with the policies becoming ever more reactionary. Euthanasia occurred to get rid of the biologically inferior. The establishment of the Nuremberg laws to restrict Jews and Romas. Kristallnacht went on to coordinate effort to be harsh towards Jews in Germany and Austria, and then of course the establishment of the ghettos, the camps, and the final solution. Race ideology was a big element of Nazi Germany. Hitler's regime comes to an end in 1945 with the conclusion of World War II. His foreign policy failures after 1940 contribute to his demise. He was becoming more unpopular by both sides of the political spectrum, and future attempts against him will come from the right and come from the conservative military officers. But ultimately, in April 1945, Hitler will be dead, and his regime comes to a conclusion. And with that, the end of this part of topic 10, authoritarian, also comes to a conclusion.